rich slowly is not a virtue. It is what people tell themselves after they have already missed the window that would have made them rich quickly. Slow and steady is comforting precisely because it asks nothing uncomfortable of you today. It defers every hard decision to some future version of yourself, and that future version, when the moment actually arrives, is rarely any braver than the one currently watching this video. Machiavelli never respected patience for its own sake. He respected timing, and timing is a different animal entirely. A prince who waited for the perfect moment lost his throne to the rival who simply moved while the moment was still available. Money obeys the exact same law, and almost nobody who gives you financial advice will ever say this plainly because it sounds reckless the first time you hear it and only sounds obvious the 10th time. Usually right after you have watched it happen to someone else. Conventional financial wisdom is built almost entirely around protecting you from a single failure mode, moving too fast and losing everything in one dramatic mistake. It is rarely built to protect you from the much quieter failure mode this video is actually about. The one where you lose slowly, silently, one deferred decision at a time, and never experience a single dramatic moment that would have warned you it was happening. This is not a video about get-rich-quick schemes, and it is not permission to gamble your future on a whim. This is a warning about the opposite mistake, the much more common one. Mistaking slowness for safety, mistaking deliberation for wisdom, and spending years being careful about a decision that speed would have already resolved. Look closely at the people you consider successful, and you will find the same pattern hiding in plain sight. Almost none of them waited until conditions were ideal. Almost all of them moved while conditions were still uncertain, then adjusted in public while everyone else was still calculating in private. The uncertainty never fully disappeared for them either. They simply stopped treating its disappearance as a precondition for beginning. By the end of this video, you will have a very specific answer to a question most people never bother asking honestly. Not whether you are working hard enough, but whether you are moving at all, in the places where movement was always the only thing that actually mattered. 8 laws. Not about working harder, about moving faster on purpose, in the specific places where speed is the entire advantage. Pay attention to which of these 8 you privately already recognize in yourself, because that recognition is the actual point of this video, not just the entertainment of hearing it described. Law number 1. Momentum beats perfection. A plan that is 70% ready and already moving will outperform a plan that reaches 95% ready and never leaves the drawing table. This is not an argument for sloppy work. It is an argument against the specific trap where refining a plan quietly becomes a substitute for running it. The remaining 30% almost never gets discovered by more thinking. It gets discovered by the market, by a customer, by a competitor's reaction, none of which can be simulated accurately from behind a desk, no matter how sophisticated the simulation becomes. Picture 2 people building the same kind of small venture. One insists on perfecting every detail before the first customer ever sees it. The branding, the pricing, the process, all polished to a shine before anyone outside is allowed to look. The other launches something rough within weeks, ugly in places, and lets real customers tell them what actually needs fixing. A year later, the second person has iterated through a dozen real versions shaped by real feedback. The first person is still polishing a version that has never once met the market it was built for. The perfectionist genuinely believes they are protecting their reputation by waiting. What they are actually doing is protecting themselves from the discomfort of being seen doing something imperfectly, which is a very different goal dressed up in more respectable language. Momentum is not the absence of quality. It is quality earned through contact with reality instead of imagined in isolation from it. A ship earns its final shape by sailing through actual water, adjusting as it goes. A ship designed entirely in dry dock, however elegant on paper, has never once been tested against a wave. Ask yourself honestly how many of your own unfinished projects are still unfinished because they are genuinely incomplete, and how many are unfinished because finishing them would finally expose them to judgment. Those are two very different problems, and only one of them is solved by more careful work. The other is solved only by releasing something before you feel ready, which is the entire uncomfortable point. Law number 2. Whoever moves first sets the price. In any market, the first serious player to commit does not just gain a head start. They gain the power to define the terms everyone who follows will have to negotiate around. Arrive after the price, the reputation, and the relationships are already set, and you spend your energy competing on someone else's terms instead of writing your own. This is why being first is worth so much more than being better in the earliest stage of almost any market. Better can always be improved later once you are already inside the conversation. First cannot be recovered once someone else has already claimed it, no matter how much better your version turns out to be afterward. Consider two merchants who each spot the same emerging opportunity. One spends months building the perfect case before approaching anyone, waiting for total certainty that never quite arrives. The other approaches the very first serious buyer within days, imperfect pitch and all, and closes on terms that become the reference point for every deal that follows. By the time the cautious merchant finally approaches the market, the price has already been set by someone else, and every conversation he has now starts from a position he did not get to choose. Notice that the first mover in this story was not smarter, better connected, or better capitalized. They simply arrived while the terms were still unwritten, and the terms, once written by someone else, are astonishingly difficult to rewrite afterward. No matter how much better your version of the deal actually is. This is not recklessness. It is recognizing that the cost of moving early with an unpolished offer is almost always smaller than the cost of moving late into a market someone else has already priced without you. An unpolished first offer can always be improved once real feedback starts arriving. A market that is already settled around someone else's terms rarely reopens itself just because a better version finally showed up asking politely. Machiavelli understood this instinctively when he studied how new territories were won. The prince who arrived first, even with a smaller force, could set the terms of engagement before the larger, slower army had finished mobilizing. Arriving second, no matter how much stronger, meant negotiating around decisions that had already been made without you in the room. Law number 3, compounding only pays the early. Money that starts compounding today has decades to work. Money that starts compounding in 10 years has 10 fewer years to work, and no later amount of effort, no matter how impressive, fully closes that gap. Compounding does not reward intensity, it rewards duration, and duration only exists for the people who started the clock as early as possible. Most people intuitively understand compounding as a concept and still fail to act on it as a decision, because the cost of waiting one more year never feels large in the moment it is being paid. It only becomes visible decades later, added up all at once at exactly the point where it is far too late to do anything about the years already gone. Two people invest the exact same total amount of money over their lifetimes. One begins in their 20s, modestly, patiently. The other waits until their 30s, telling themselves they will simply invest more once they start, to make up for lost time. The math rarely cooperates with that plan. The early starter, contributing less overall, frequently finishes with more because the extra years of compounding did work. The extra dollars alone could never fully replace. The decade lost between 20 and 30 is not merely 10 years of missed contributions. It is 10 years of missed growth compounding on top of missed growth. A debt that keeps quietly accumulating interest against you long after the original decision to wait has been completely forgotten by everyone except the balance itself. This is the cruelest version of the speed principle because it cannot be negotiated with later. Every other mistake in this video can be corrected the moment you notice it. This one simply cannot. The years already spent waiting are the one cost no later urgency can ever refund. This is precisely why the advice to wait until you know more is so much more expensive than it sounds when it comes to starting the compounding clock specifically. Knowledge can be acquired at almost any age. The years themselves cannot be acquired at any price, at any age, under any circumstance, which makes this the one law on this list where delay is not merely costly. It is the single most irreversible mistake available to you. Law number 4. Slow caution is a debt you never see. Every year spent deliberating instead of acting is a year quietly borrowed against a future that will eventually have to pay for it, with interest in the form of opportunities that will simply no longer exist by the time the deliberation finally ends. Debt of this kind never arrives with a monthly statement reminding you what you owe. It arrives once decades later as a single quiet realization that the years spent being careful never actually purchased the safety they promised. Two people each identify the same promising opportunity at the same time. One spends a year researching it exhaustively, determined to remove every trace of uncertainty before committing. The other commits within the month, uncertainty and all, and spends that same year learning by doing instead of learning by studying. When the year ends, the researcher finally feels ready to begin, only to discover the opportunity has shifted, the market has moved, and the version they researched no longer exists in the form they studied it. The one who moved is now a year ahead. With real experience the researcher's most thorough notes could never have provided. The tragedy here is not that the research was wasted. Much of it was accurate and genuinely well done. The tragedy is that it was research into a version of the opportunity that no longer existed by the time it was finally acted on. Because opportunities, unlike the research describing them, do not hold still and wait to be studied. Caution feels responsible in the moment it is chosen. It only reveals its true cost much later, quietly, in the form of a door that is no longer open when the deliberation finally concludes. The cruelest part of this particular trap is that it never announces itself as a mistake while it is happening. It feels like diligence the entire time, right up until the moment the opportunity has visibly moved on without you. At which point it very suddenly stops feeling like diligence and starts feeling like the very expensive mistake it always was. Law number 5. Speed is a wall slow rivals cannot climb. Once you build enough momentum, the gap you create is not just a lead. It becomes a structural barrier because catching up requires a slower competitor to first match your current pace and then somehow exceed it, which grows harder the longer they wait to try. A wall like this is rarely built on purpose. It is simply the accumulated shadow of many small, fast decisions stacked one on top of another, invisible from a distance until a slower rival finally walks close enough to realize how high it has actually become. Watch two competitors enter the same space at nearly the same time. One moves deliberately, carefully, one step at a time. The other moves fast, stumbles occasionally, and corrects in public rather than in private. Within 2 years, the fast mover has tested and discarded more failed approaches than the careful one has even attempted, which means they have also found more of the approaches that actually work. The careful competitor is not just behind on results. They are behind on the accumulated knowledge that only comes from having tried and failed far more times already. By the 3rd year, the gap has stopped looking like a head start and started looking like an entirely different category of competitor. And this is exactly the moment the careful player usually decides too late that catching up will require the very speed they spent 2 years avoiding. Speed does not just move you forward, it compounds your own experience faster than a cautious rival can accumulate theirs. And that gap, left uncorrected, tends to widen rather than close. This is why a fast-moving newcomer is so much more dangerous to an established but slow incumbent than the incumbent tends to expect. The incumbent is measuring the newcomer's current size and finding it small enough to ignore. What the incumbent is failing to measure is the newcomer's rate of change, which is the only number in this comparison that actually predicts what happens 2 years from now. Law number 6. Urgency creates the opportunities patience waits for. Waiting for the perfect opportunity to appear is a passive strategy dressed up as a patient one. Manufacturing urgency, forcing a decision point, setting a deadline against yourself tends to produce more real opportunities than sitting still ever does, because opportunities disproportionately favor the people already in motion when they appear. This is not a coincidence of luck. Opportunities are almost always noticed and awarded by people who are themselves already busy, already moving, already looking for someone in motion to hand something to. Standing still does not just fail to attract their attention. It actively removes you from the small set of people they are even looking at in the first place. 2 people want the same kind of break. One waits quietly, hoping to be discovered, noticed, or invited. The other creates their own deadline, publishes something imperfect, reaches out to people who have not asked to be reached, and forces a series of small decision points into existence rather than waiting for one to arrive on its own. The person manufacturing urgency generates far more attempts, and more attempts simply produce more opportunities the same way. Casting more lines into the water produces more fish regardless of skill. The person waiting to be discovered is quietly outsourcing the timing of their own life to someone else's attention span. And attention, historically, has never been a reliable thing to depend on arriving right when you need it most. Patience is often just urgency's more comfortable disguise. It feels like discipline. It frequently functions as a very sophisticated form of hiding. Ask which of these 2 people you actually resemble right now in the specific area of your life where you feel most stuck. If you are waiting to be chosen, invited, or discovered, you are almost certainly the one hiding behind patience. The people who actually get chosen are, overwhelmingly, the people who stopped waiting to be and simply made themselves impossible to overlook instead. Law number 7. The comfortable path is never the fast one. Speed and comfort pull in opposite directions almost every time, because comfort is built around minimizing friction, and friction uncomfortably is where most of the useful information actually lives. The fast path moves through friction quickly. The comfortable path avoids it entirely and therefore never quite arrives. Most people do not consciously choose the comfortable path because they believe it is faster. They choose it because it does not require them to feel anything unpleasant today, and they quietly agree to pay for that comfort later in a currency, time that never shows the exchange rate until the bill actually comes due. 2 people take on the same challenge. One chooses the comfortable, well-supported route. More preparation, more approval, more certainty gathered before any friction is allowed to occur. The other chooses the faster, rougher route directly through the friction, absorbing awkward conversations, visible mistakes, and uncomfortable feedback in real time. The second person arrives noticeably faster, not because they suffered more for its own sake, but because friction, once passed through rather than avoided, turns out to be the fastest teacher available. The comfortable route is not slower by accident. It is slower by design, because every layer of preparation, approval, and certainty added to a plan is also a layer of delay added between you and the friction that was always going to teach you the most useful lesson available. If a path feels entirely comfortable the whole way through, that comfort is usually a sign the path is slower than it needs to be, not proof that it is wiser. This does not mean discomfort should be sought for its own sake, as if suffering were somehow the goal. It means discomfort should stop being treated as evidence you're doing something wrong. More often, it is the clearest evidence available that you are finally doing something that matters enough to resist you. Law number 8, stop refining the plan and start running it. Every law in this video points to the same final instruction. At some point, the planning itself becomes the obstacle, and the only way through it is to stop improving the plan and start testing it against the one thing that was always going to have the final word anyway: reality. There is no formula that tells you the exact day planning is curdled into avoidance. There is only a feeling familiar to anyone who has ever stalled on something that mattered, of reaching for one more piece of research specifically because it postpones the moment you would otherwise have to actually begin. Picture the version of yourself 1 year from now looking back at the decision you are circling right now. In one version, they are grateful you finally moved, imperfect and uncertain as the moment was. In the other version, they are still waiting for you to finish preparing, one polished revision behind where they could already have been. Only one of those two futures was ever actually available to you, and it was decided the moment you chose whether to keep refining or finally begin. Every plan eventually reaches the point where the next unit of preparation produces less value than the first unit of real action would. Most people never notice they have crossed that point because refining feels identical to progress right up until someone tells them, usually too late, that they crossed it months ago. None of these 8 laws ask you to be careless. They ask you to notice the very specific moment where care quietly turns into avoidance, and to recognize that moment for what it actually is. Not wisdom, but a very well-dressed form of standing still. Go back through everything this video has argued and notice it is really one law wearing 8 different disguises. Momentum, first movement, compounding, urgency, friction. All of it collapses into the same instruction. The clock is already running whether you act or not, and the only real choice available to you is whether you spend the next moment moving or spend it justifying why you haven't yet. Machiavelli's entire body of work, stripped of its historical costume, is ultimately a study of exactly this one tension. The ruler who waited for a guarantee that never existed against the ruler who acted on the best available information and adjusted as reality corrected him. Only one of those two rulers is remembered as decisive. The other is remembered, if remembered at all, as the one who was still deliberating when the opportunity finally belonged to someone else. If this changed the way you think about waiting, then don't stop here, because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, then subscribe. Because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.